In this episode, we are joined by a special guest, Aaron Lavore, one of the founders of Trails Traces Roastery. Aaron explains what coffee processing is and the impact it has on the ending flavor profile of the coffee we all enjoy. Hi, guys, and welcome to our fifth episode of Conversations Over Coffee. I'm Martin, and to my bottom is Brian. Hi, Brian. Say hello. Okay, di ako narinig ni Brian.
Hi
Sige.
guys, welcome to Conversations Over Coffee podcast. Huh?
And today's a special episode because we have today one of the up and coming processors and sellers of coffee. Brian, I'll leave you to the introduction of our guest today.
Hello. There.
Hello.
So our guest today, is a level 1Q processor, my idol in coffee.
Wow.
Lakers fan,
Lakers fan.
none other than Lakers fan, head co-owner of Trails Traces Roastery, none other than Aaron Llavore. So guys, please welcome Aaron, Martin.
Hi, Aaron. Welcome to the show.
Salamat naman sa introduction ni Brian.
Kahit panalo yung Miami Heat today.
Panalo.
But
Okay
good
lang.
game, very good game siya, di ba?
Good game
So-
pa rin.
So Aaron, please try to smile kahit alam namin medyo malungkot ka today.
Kakalimutan ko muna yun for a while. Sige lang.
Sige, coffee lang tayo. Coffee lang muna tayo today.
Coffee muna tayo.
Okay, so Aaron, to start off, during our first episode, me and Brian talked about how we got into this beautiful dark rabbit hole of coffee, and we'd like to ask you the same thing. Could you please take us through your coffee journey?
Coffee journey ko, nagsimula siya way back 2019 when I was still in a corporate job. So yung work ko before is food research and development ako sa isang food company. Then nabigyan ako ng task actually na mag-research about coffee. Wala pa akong idea about coffee back then. So like Starbucks, yan yung coffee ko before. Then nabigyan nga ako ng time to research. Then nakita ko na mga coffee shops other than Starbucks. Tapos nakita ko na din yung mga waves of coffee. Then, dun ko na talaga nakita yung rabbit hole ng coffee. I tried all the coffee shops within reach talaga. So, dun ko nakita talaga na madami pang dimensions yung coffee than a bitter cup.
So what was it about
Dun talaga
coffee in the
nagsimula.
first place that made you want to get into this dark world?
Well, first of all, bilang Filipinos tayo, mahilig tayo sa coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Pero, nung nakita ko talaga na nung nakita ko actually mga notes ng coffee, nung una, nakikita ko lang mga nuts, ganyan. Tapos may nakita akong blueberry. Sa parang paano siya. So, bilang food tech din ako in nature, parang na-curious ako kung paano siya possible without adding flavorings or whatnot.
Oh.
Yun talaga.
So may background ka talaga into yung chemistry ng food in general.
So food technology graduate ako sa UST.
Oh, so this makes so much more. Parang nako-connect na yung dots and feeling ko mas na-excite na ako magtanong.
Yeah. Kaya talagang idol ko sa
Mukha
coffee si
kaya
Aaron kasi
parang idol nga talaga.
alam niya eh.
deserved.
Salamat naman,
alam
Brian.
niya eh.
Salamat.
Alam niya eh.
So pwedeng siya yung LeBron James ng coffee ngayon, no?
Wag naman.
Baka ano muna.
Siguro LeBron in the
Easy
early
muna.
years. LeBron in the yung first Cavs run there.
Wow.
So I'm thinking na okay, so someone with a very deep background in food in general, there must have been that one coffee cup that made you go, wow, grabe tong coffee na to. Na yun yung we call it the wow cup, and in other words, the point of no return na talaga. So would you remember what coffee that was, and could you take us through what you were feeling while you were drinking that cup of coffee?
So actually, nagsimula kasi nung nagre-research ako about coffee. So I was making a report on all the cafes within Metro Manila. So salamat sa corporate company ko na bayad ako habang ginagawa.
Sarap
Pero
doon.
so so lumabas yung pangalan ni Arabica. So 2019 bago pa lang sila. So pumunta ako sa BGCs, then ang ganda nung shop, tapos doon ko nakita yung option ng Japanese blend ata nila yon and Ethiopian coffee. So na-curious ako anong notes, tinanong ko. Ang alam ko pa rin back then is matamis, nutty, yun pa lang yung na-expose ako ng coffee. Nung sinabi nga ng barista nila na blueberries tsaka parang very sweet notes, parang sabi ko, paano? So nung trinay ko talaga, latte lang siya, no sugar. Tapos nung pagkasip ko, parang, wow, parang blueberry cheesecake yung lasa. So doon na talaga na nag-test na ako ng iba't ibang origins. Tapos yun talaga yung pinaka-wow. Parang napatulala ako. Parang alam mo yung yung sa Ratatouille na gumagana yung background ko.
Parang nag-flashback.
Ganun yung yun yung first wow up ko. Nag-flashback talaga, parang grabe.
So, napatigil yung mundo mo dahil sa Arabica pala. Sana all.
Ako patay tayo dyan.
Patay tayo dyan. Baka may biglang umiyak dito. Medyo na teary-eyed ako doon. So, you mentioned
Sa coffee.
Oh, nakakaiyak kasi yung kape. So, from that blueberry cheesecake coffee, that was 2019. That was 1 year. Oh, 1 year lang yun, no? Kung tama math ko. So, could you tell us where are you now in your coffee journey, and what are you currently doing in the world of coffee now?
So now to get us, and now we pinpoint farms locally, tapos as much as possible tinitignan namin ngayon kung paano magiging consistent yung crop nila in terms of processing. Tapos, sinishowcase namin siya dun sa list namin ngayon na ino-offer sa Trails and Traces. Ayun, so we, as much as possible, give and take kami sa farmers. Hindi lang enough na binibigyan namin yung coffee nila. Pero in return, binibigyan namin sila ng feedback kung ito yung coffee mo and how natin ma-upgrade yung quality. Yan. As far as yun pa lang yung ginagawa.
Okay, so very good thing na you also mentioned.
I'd like to ask first.
Sige, go Brian, ikaw muna.
No. Sige. I'd like to ask Aaron kung, yun nga yung ginagawa nila, and if, like, in their current menu now, meron ka bang coffee na ikaw mismo yung tumulong mag-process, or nalabas nyo na ba yun?
Before actually, nung mga around April, may nilaunch kami na Liberica, anaerobic. So, natikman mo rin to, Brian. So, galing po mismo sa farm namin.
Finca Llavore. Finca Llavore. Oo nga pala, naalala ko yun.
Does Finca mean farm?
Yes.
Okay.
Farm.
Okay.
Yun. So, basically kasi may farm din kami sa Bulacan that grows Robusta and Liberica variety. So, low elevation lang. 300 MASL lang yung elevation. So, out of curiosity lang, actually I've done naturals kasi. So far kasi naturals pa rin nagagawa ko and ang kaya ng abilities ko. So I tried anaerobic naturals on Liberica, and si Brian na lang magkikwento kung ano yung lasa.
Mamaya. When we dive into the processing. But go ahead, Martin.
So yun nga, you mentioned Trails and
Tapos
Traces.
Yung isa pa go.
So you mentioned Trails and Traces coffee na rin. So could you walk us through how you started, where the idea came from to start your own business, and then why you wanted to pursue it? Kasi I'm imagining 1 year in the coffee world, that's a very fast period of time to be able to conceptualize, okay, this is what I want to do with this coffee. And could you just take us through your mindset when you first started it?
So actually, before ending my corporate work, parang yun nga, nag-dive deep na talaga ako sa coffee. And sabi ko sa sarili ko that time na I would like to make a career out of this. So Actually, yung Trails and Traces, bunga siya ng cafe na hindi natuloy. So,
Interesting.
yun. So, bilang na-research ko na din kasi majority ng supply chain ng coffee, nakita ko kung saang part yung pinaka-stable and profitable. Syempre. Tapos, yun. Shout out din sa partner ko, si Dancing Roaster, si Mandrake. Yun, siya yung nagsimula, kaming dalawa nagsimula and nag-isip talaga kung anong magiging core ng Trails and Traces. So, based sa name, we focus on traceability talaga ng coffee. Yeah.
Wait, question lang. Bakit hindi natuloy yung cafe?
Ano yun? Conflict of interest ng mga partners.
Okay.
Hi partners kung nanonood man kayo.
Yeah. Wow. So, that's a quick background, no, of Aaron and how he is. But quick question before we go into the meat of the discussion is that level 1 Q processor ka, di ba, Aaron? So,
yes.
What does it mean to be a level 1 Q processor? And what can you do that we cannot do at the moment?
So sa CQI, Coffee Quality Institute, yung Q processing course, may 3 levels siya. So yung 1 level is more of general idea of processing, mga calibration din siya ng palette in terms of processing, like how can you distinguish wash, honey, and naturals. Tapos yung level 2, yun yung hands-on. So kung yung level 1 is 3 days sa classroom setting and calibration, yung level 2 naman 6 days ka sa washing station. So kung magti-take kayo ng level 2 class, pupunta talaga sa washing station. So yung alam kong last na nag-take ng level 2 is sa Bacofa ata, not sure, or sa Bukidnon. So 6 days sila doon. Then yung level 3, which is ang alam ko nag-iisa pa lang level 3 na Q processor sa mundo, which is yung nagtuturo ng level 3, is magte-take ka ng research sa Colombia kung saan yung headquarters ng CQI. Yan yung level 3 Q process.
So the level 3 is yung pinaka-top na?
Yeah. And magastos.
Para lahat naman sa coffee magastos
Yun na talaga.
Parang every part of coffee magastos eh.
Yeah.
Pero we're here because we love it, and yung mga wallet natin, wala na yan. Payat na sila lahat, nag-diet na. Okay, so I think before we get into the main topic for today, could you walk us through the parts of the coffee cherry? Yeah. So okay, go.
Ayan. So to start it off, coffee comes from a fruit, so a cherry. So ang coffee cherry, may multiple parts yan. So yung pinaka-coffee na ininom natin, yung beans, is actually a seed. So nasa gitna siya ng pinaka-cherry. So wait lang. Ay, pwedeng pa nung screen share?
Sige. Alternate. Coffee cherry, tama di ba? Okay. So could you walk us through
yung coffee cherry, may multiple...
Could you walk us through yan?
Yung pinaka-parts ng coffee cherry, yung pinaka-concern natin dito is from the skin, the fruit mucilage, the parchment, and yung pinaka-bean. So, need natin to malaman kasi nandito lahat nangyayari yung flavor development based on each processing method na i-explain ko mamaya. So, skin, mucilage, parchment, then yung pinaka-bean. So, yeah.
So this is the bean. This is the part,
Also,
this is what we know, yung number 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yung pinaka nakikita na natin sa bag is yung pinaka na. Also kung may nakikita kayong parang papery na nakabalot sa coffee, which is yun yung silver skin. So yan.
Ito. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Thanks, Aaron, for that quick background of what the coffee cherry in general. Actually, di pa ako nakakita nito in person. So exciting yan. Next time kapag safe na lumabas, That will be the first thing I'm going to look at in my list. Okay, so earlier you mentioned yung different basic processes. I think you mentioned wash. And I think I heard anaerobic as well. So when I first started drinking coffee, I kept hearing all these terms that I didn't really understand. Just like the first one that came to mind was processing talaga, and that's why we wanted to start this episode, just for us and for all of our listeners to get a brief introduction and to understand even more what processing is. So to start off the main topic for today, could you give us a walkthrough of the concept behind processing?
So basically, coffee processing is a segment sa coffee supply chain where everything that happens between harvesting hanggang makarating siya sa green beans. So majority ng flavor and quality development nangyayari dito sa step na to. So processing then is how producers differentiate themselves from other farms. So dito na talaga nagkakatalo yung mga ibang farmers kahit galing Davao yan, galing Benguet yan. Kung may kanya-kanyang processes na technique yung farmers, magkakaiba lang ang lasa yan. Yan.
Okay, since sakto you have a food tech background, could you walk us through yung basic process and the basic science behind processing?
So basic science ng processing is, kung naalala nyo kanina yung parts ng coffee cherry na may mucilage covering tayo and yung parchment. So ang goal kasi ng mga processing is flavor development na makaka-penetrate through the parchment hanggang makarating dun sa pinaka-bean. Mm-hmm. So ang process na mangyayari doon is fermentation. So this is a process wherein microorganisms consume yung mucilage covering, which is high in sugar, then they'll convert it into volatile compounds. So in short, umiinom tayo ng byproduct ng microorganisms. Yun yung pinaka-basic basic explanation.
Kung yun na yung basic, natatakot na ako sa pinaka-classroom sessions niyo.
Kanina nagdulang ako ng kape. Nagdulang ako kape, parang wala akong iniisip. Tapos ngayon, dami ko nang iniisip. Pag nagdulang ako kape, byproduct to ng microorganisms.
Actually, I think that's what
So ano yun? So sa coffee cherries, once na pina-harvest nila yung coffee, may millions and millions of microorganisms ang available dun sa fruit, sa mucilage, sa air, sa mga instruments na ginagamit nila. Lahat yun nagko-contribute dun kung anong kakalabasan ng coffee sa dulo. Ayan.
Yun. Sabi nga ni Brian, ngayon, ang dami nating iniisip about coffee, which I think it helps us, parang, it gives us a deeper appreciation of the bean itself. Diba? Like, once you understand where things come from and how it's made, parang, mas nag-level up yung appreciation mo for coffee. So I think you touched up on this na rin earlier na, yung effect ng processing on coffee. So I think this is the best time to start asking what are the most common processing methods we see here in the Philippines locally with our beans. And could you give us a quick explanation on each one of these?
So basically may 3 basic processing methods tayo sa coffee na ginagamit sa Philippines, which is first naturals. Next is honey process. Then third is wash. So, simulan natin sa naturals, which is majority ng mga producers uses naturals because naturals use less water than any processing method. So, sa farm kasi, dito sa Philippines, pinakahirap is yung access to water. So, natural yung pinakamadaling gawin and pinaka-tricky gawin kasi ipapatuyo yung mga coffee cherries like until maging raisins sila.
So similar to what binibilad lang talaga sa araw?
Sure nila raisins pag natuyo. Pero binibilad nila sa patio, binibilad nila sa raised beds. So yun, hanggang maabot nila yung moisture content na dapat. Pero not every farm kasi is capable of measuring moisture content. So give you a side note lang din, sa drying need maka-target ng 12% moisture. So nagsa-start ang coffee fruit around 50 to 60%. So kailangan nila ma-target yung moisture na yon in terms of duration on drying. Duration depende sa lugar. Yun.
So for these farmers that don't really have access to measuring tools to check kung how much yung moisture sa beans, how do they do it? Or dapat ba lahat sila may ganun na? May certain tool to do it?
Actually, depende sa farm eh. Pero pinaka nakita ko sa farm talagang paano nila chine-check yung moisture is by feel talaga. Like, para na siyang soybeans, para siyang palay sa kamay. Ganun na yung niya, feel niya sa kamay. Also, malaman nila din sa taste, ready na. Kasi ang mangyayari dyan, kung maalala, going back dun sa parts ng coffee cherry, di ba may skin, mucilage tayo, and parchment.
Mm-hmm.
So, pag tama na yung drying ng coffee, pag diniak nila yon, lalabas na direkta yung beans.
Okay.
Yun yung pinaka-sign nila na okay na yung drying. Kung mga farms na medyo enhanced sa gamit, may moisture analyzer sila on the farm. Ang nakita ko itong Agratron, para siyang canister, na lalagay nila yung green beans doon, tapos may reading sila mismo kung anong moisture content.
Galing.
Features.
So ibig sabihin yung level of yung mga ibang farmers natin dito in the Philippines, very high na rin. Kasi nga, they're able to tell just by feeling the beans na okay, this is a ready product na.
Not really. Siguro kasi due to time din na karamihan mga coffee farmers natin kasi is around 10 to 20 years in the coffee growing na. So alam na nila mismo sa sarili nila kung ano nang yung tamang duration ng drying. Pero better pa din na may instrument sila na magagamit na para ma-check talaga yung pinaka-moisture. Kasi very, very particular talaga yung moisture kasi yun yung magde-determine nung shelf life ng green beans mo. Na from transit hanggang makarating dun sa roaster, kailangan din ng roaster malaman na 10 to 12% yung moisture ng coffee beans mo. So madami talaga nagpe-play dun sa processing, sa part ng processing, which is drying.
Very interesting. Sige. So next up, that was the naturals process, di ba?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So next up, could you explain to us yung difference naman niya sa washed and why it's also being practiced here?
So sa wash naman, so nabanggit ko kanina, yung naturals, it will take 3 weeks to 1 month mahigit. So dito naman sa wash, kung going back again dun sa coffee, sa parts ng coffee cherry, dinedepot nila yung coffee cherries kung saan ma-expose nila yung mucilage covering and yung parchment. So ang gagawin nila doon, either lalagay nila sa bags or sa container para mag-ferment. So yung fermentation kasi sa wash has two purposes. So one is to remove the mucilage or flavor development. So yung microorganisms na kakainin yung mucilage covering hanggang ma-expose yung parchment which is ready to dry. So nagkakatalo na lang sila for flavor development sa duration ng fermentation. So yung process ng wash will take about 2 weeks to 3 weeks lang. Then ready na siya for dehulling.
So would you need a specific kind of water for that?
I've asked people in the industry, better daw na may TDS reading din actually sa water sa processing. Like they need lower TDS water, tapos kailangan din nila ng very clean water. Like may na-experience din kasi ako sa Benguet. Like may mga microorganisms kasi na present sa water na nakaka-affect dun sa lasa ng coffee. So kailangan clean din yung water na gagamitin nila dun. So usually sa mga farms ginagamit talaga nila galing sa spring, galing sa lake, galing sa mga bodies of water na malapit sa kanila.
Okay. Sorry, you mentioned TDS for our listeners out there and also for me actually. I keep seeing this word being thrown around lalo na sa Coffee Home Brewers group. Maybe you and Brian could elaborate what this term is. Para lang mas may idea kami of what it does.
So Brian, ikaw muna.
Sige. So, TDS is, very surface. Tas si Aaron na yung mag-explain. Pero TDS is basically the total dissolved solids. So, if you can imagine yun nga sa water, na if you look at it in a micro manner, makikita mo lahat ng total dissolved solids, like everything that's within the molecules of water na solid. That's basically TDS. But Aaron, tuloy mo na lang.
Ayun, so yung TDS, tama naman si Brian doon. So yung kaya concerned din yung TDS in terms of brewing ng water. Water na gagamit for brewing ng coffee is kailangan mo yung right amount of TDS, not so high, not so low, para maka-extract ng mga volatile compounds na available dun sa coffee. Also, important din kung ano man yung mga minerals niyo. So, dyan na lumalabas yung mga third wave water, mga aqua code, tsaka yung mga other formulation water na available sa atin sa market.
Okay. Thank you for that, mga sir. I'm learning a lot today. Dami ako may look up din after this call mamaya. So, we're here at the last most common practice here in the Philippines, which is honey. I imagine it has something to do with honey, but Aaron, could you just walk us through this honey? It's honey wash, diba?
Honey wash. So, yung honey process kasi, so actually ito yung middle part eh. Yung naturals, they take 1 month mahigit. Tapos yung wash, they take a least amount of time. So yung honey naman kasi, ang aim is to recreate yung flavor profile ng naturals, but not as long as the naturals processing time. So, ang honey process, magti-take siya around 2 weeks hanggang 1 month mahigit, depende sa flavor profile na gusto mo achieve. So, sa market, kung green buyer ka, makikita mo yung white honey, red honey, yellow honey, black honey. So, from the color, malalaman nyo na from white to black, yung duration ng coffee processing. So, yung honey process na impart siya ng flavors of coffee na very fermenty, very pungent. So, kung mapapansin nyo lahat ng mga honey process na nasa market, may mga notes ng caramelized pineapples, mga fermented fruits. Kasi yun yung mga yung honey process in general. Also, may gumawa na naglagay ng honey sa coffee processing, pero honey process kasi, so going back again dun sa parts ng coffee cherry, ide-depulp yung coffee cherry, and yung mucilage covering intact siya dun sa parchment, ida-direct siya na ibibilad sa patio or sa raised beds. So yun, dun na mangyayari lahat ng fermentation, and very tricky din kasi siya. Kasi so yung mucilage covering is very sweet. As in, I tried na before na yung coffee cherry, as in, nangatain mo. Para kang kumain ng apples tsaka grapes. Ganun siya katamis.
Ooh.
So, as long as na nabibilad siya sa araw, magdidikit-dikit yun. As in, magka-clumps siya. So, yung mga nag-honey process, binibreak nila yung mga clumps kasi nagkakaroon ng uneven.
Okay. So you mentioned flavor profiles for honey, which is more on the sweet side. So could you just walk us through yung general profile we can expect from these 3 types of processing?
So yun, sa naturals, as much as possible, nagkakaroon siya ng fruity flavors kasi mas matagal yung contact niya sa fruit covering niya. So nagkakaroon siya ng fruit flavors, mga stone fruits, tropical fruits, nagkakaroon siya ng heavy body. Yun ang parang stereotype ng natural processed coffees. So honey nga nabang very clean profile, crisp yung acidity, tapos very light yung body. So depends na lang yun sa roast profile na gagawa. So yun yung pinaka stereotype na profile ng each processing method.
Okay. So question for both of you naman.
Anong favorite mo?
Sorry. Ayun.
Ngayon. Oh, sige.
Actually, yun din yung tanong ko.
Ask, ano yung favorite nyo? Okay. Sakto. So, ano favorite natin na lang? Una ka na, Martin. Ano favorite mo ngayon na processing? Like when you when you brew, anong favorite process yung binabrew mo?
Right now,
Ako usually mga
Aaron.
washed.
Wash. What about it though?
Ay, sige. So ako mga washed. Kasi sa washed coffees kasi, more clear yung notes for me. And very crisp siya and refreshing yung profile. Kaya yun yung usual go-to ko na coffee.
Ikaw, Brian.
Martin.
Sige, ako na lang. I think I've tried all
Sige,
three
go.
of those. Pero yung pinaka nagsistand out pa lang sa akin would be honey wash. I think that was a Bacofa coffee from... that was a Bacofa one. And then, naalala ko very vividly yung feeling in my mouth when I drank it. It was parang mangga yung iniinom ko. Parang mango juice yung nasa bibig ko doon. Ikaw, Brian.
Ako ngayon, washed ngayon. Kasi sa Philippines ngayon, sabi nga ni Aaron na there are a lot of people who not just farm and harvest natural process, but serve it on their menu. Like a lot of the roasters, probably more than 50% ng offerings nila would be naturals. And yun nga, for me, there's a time for that na ang sarap din ng naturals. Like yung heavy body and yung buong-buo yung flavor. But then, what I go for now is yung flavor clarity din nga ng washed na and yung mga notes na jasmine, lavender, ganun. Yun
Lavender?
Yung mga ganong notes, very floral and light. Yun din yung mga coffee na sobrang ini-enjoy ko ngayong i-brew. Like, yung iniinom ko for this episode is from La Cabra. So, it's a Guatemala coffee na washed geisha. So, it's very good. Lasang green tea. Grabe. Like, na-enjoy ko lang siya kasi it's totally different from dun sa available sa atin every day.
Interesting. Huh. Kasi before this episode, I was looking up yung mga processing methods nga, and those three were the most common ones that I've seen. And then may mga lumalabas na I looked up processing and I saw carbonic maceration. And then I saw lots of different processing methods that I couldn't pronounce. So since you're here, could you enlighten us a bit on what these processes are and how they're different from the ones we just talked about?
So, yun nga, may 3 basic tayo na coffee processing. So, pumasok na ngayon yung mga processing methods na out of the box. So, ina-extend actually yung flavor development ng coffee, which is, yun nga, isa sa mga nabanggit mo is yung carbonic maceration. So, madami pa actually. May carbonic maceration, anaerobic process, ice fermented, may barrel fermented, may tropical process, and many more. So, pinupush talaga yung limit kung paano magkakaroon ng flavor development dun sa coffee. So, dyan na actually nagkakatalo yung mga farmers din and mga roasters kung ano yung offer nila. Like, may kita mo na may carbonic maceration, may kita mo mga strawberries, mga tropical fruits, and very enhanced yung sweetness. Pag mga extended fermentation, lumalabas na yung mga cider vinegar, mga apples, yun, madami.
So what from these have you gotten your hands on? What from these processes have you actually tried or studied up na talaga?
Actually, naging particular ako sa anaerobic process na ginawa ko dun sa isang na-harvest namin na coffee sa farm namin, which is yung Liberica. Na-enhance yung fermented flavors, also yung mga sweetness na na-enhance niya. Also, nag-dive din ako ng carbonic maceration, which is kung shoutout pala sa podcast ni Lucia Solis. So, in-explain din niya doon kung paano ginagawa yung carbonic maceration, kung saan gumagamit ng steel tanks with the temp-controlled yung tanks na yun. Then, nilalagyan nila ng carbon dioxide. So, maceration meaning parang minumush nila together yung coffee cherries ng carbon dioxide. Basically yun. So yung carbonic maceration, kinuha siya from wine making na.
I find that there's a lot of similarities between wine and coffee now. Lalo na mas na-expose na ako to both. What do you think?
Yes, meron talagang similarities. Well, both comes from a fermentation process. Then gumagamit din ng yeast, gumagamit ng mga microorganisms. So far naman magkakaroon talaga yan ng crossover ng wine and coffee. Pero hopefully ma-highlight pa din doon yung pinaka ng coffee talaga, which is yung farms and yung mga flavor profile. Ayun.
Naisip ko lang, sana umangat din yung value ng coffee as much as yung value ng wine, no? Like, yung artisanal wine, yung talagang binigyan ng time to process. Kasi may wine din naman na parang commodity lang di ba? Yung yung mga nasa grocery ganun. And iba yung talagang wine na pinagagastusan mo. Hopefully, ganun din sa coffee siguro. Sana in the future, di ba? Like, mabigyan ng pansin yung coffee in that way.
Na-experience.
Well, nandiyan naman na yung mga yung actually this year's harvest yung El Paraiso. Yun yung isa sa mga example siguro na this year na which is a Caturra variety pero dinaan nila lahat sa process. So may mga extended fermentations, may mga tropical process. Baka meron ka dyan.
Meron ako dito.
Ayan.
Ito. Yan.
Ano notes niyan?
El Paraiso to na So El Paraiso na but then ito yung geisha, hindi to yung Castillo or Caturra, pero it's a 720-hour anaerobic process. So 720 hours siyang ferment, I think. And then yung notes niya is passion fruit, pineapple, grapes, strawberry, melon, wine, red guava, and cacao nibs. Grabe.
So
parang din pa lang grabe. Notes pa lang.
Grabe siya.
Ayun, so dun sa processing talaga na baka from the normal processes, yung notes lang niya, dun is yung passion fruit. Tapos yun nga, naging extended fermentation, nagkakaroon na siya ng diversity ng profile. Which dyan nalalabas yung cacao nibs. Yun. And yun, madami pang pwedeng mangyari kasi.
I have a question. So you have two main parts sa process in the coffee process, yeah. So you have your processing and you have your roasting. So if you were to split it 100%, how much of an effect does the processing have on the overall end product?
Actually, to put it in percentage, I think it's around 70 to 80%.
Yung
kasi,
processing pa lang.
Coffee processing determines the profile. So kasi sa coffee cherries are 100 points on the vine. So pag pinik na nila yon, habang tumatagal, bumababa yung scoring nun. So kailangan magawa dun sa processing is to create the profile and yung flavor profile and also to maintain the quality. Yun. Hanggang makarating siya sa roaster, which is yung roaster na yung bahala kung paano i-showcase yung profile na ginawa ng producer dun sa roasted coffee. Yan.
I have a question.
No.
So I think if you remember, like I think 2 months ago, yung live copying ni of Good Cup and April. So si Patrick Rolf, if you know his philosophy nga na he always focuses yung coffee niya parate focuses on the terroir rather than the processing. So now that we touched up on processing naman, and ito ngang sinabi natin na yung kay Diego Bermudez, the El Paraiso, yung basically yung mga sobrang gagaling mag-process. What's your take on focusing on the flavors na nanggagaling sa terroir rather than enhancing the flavors using processing? Like, parang hot take lang. Ano yung opinion mo? Siguro if ikaw meron kang chance na magkaroon ng very advanced farm somewhere in one of the like Panama ganyan, anong gagawin mo? Ifo-focus mo ba yung coffees mo to taste kung ano yung nasa terroir, or will you do advanced processing?
Actually, in terms of that, gusto ko actually na highlighted yung terroir pero with the right processing techniques. Kasi yung mga experimental processes kasi, they just add value to the coffee. And not everybody has the capability to do it. So, hindi rin siya economical gawin para kay farmers. So, as much as possible, if may mga farms ako na napupuntahan, do it right on the first time bago tayo mag-explore ng mga experimental processes.
Okay.
Since
So for you, no more of
go Brian, go.
Focus muna kung pigain mo muna kung ano yung nasa terroir before ka mag-experiment. Parang master one first, ganun.
Kasi baka mamaya pag dumirekta tayo ng experimental fermentation, masarap na pala yung usual na ginagawa nila, kailangan ng maging pulido ba? So, why bother?
Oo. Tama.
Interesting.
Okay.
So,
that's interesting.
Yung question ko naman is, so, you have a farm here, and of course, through Trails and Traces, you've had exposure to different greens from different countries. I wanted to get your opinion on where Philippine coffee stacks up versus international coffee. So coffees from yung mga what are the most commonly heard countries ba with coffee? You have Ethiopia, you have Brazil, Colombia. So how does Philippine coffee stack up against all of them?
So far, in terms of quality talaga, we're lagging behind. But we're getting there. Kasi ngayon pa lang tayo na-expose sa mga processing techniques, mga equipments na need ng mga farmers. So, example dyan is yung mga Milalitra farms, Bacofa farms na slowly educating the farmers kasi na how to uplift yung quality nila and yung flavor development. So, dyan pumapasok din actually yung yearly held na PCQC, Philippine Coffee Quality Competition, na nakikita yearly kung sinong farms yung mga number 1 in terms of Arabica, number 1 din sa Robusta. So, for the past years, mga nananalo is mga experimental ata if I remembered it correctly. Ayun. So, slowly getting there tayo, but not yet.
Actually, masarap nga yung isang PCQC lot, di ba? Na I offered it sa connector na sarap siya. And hoping nga na sana catch up sila sa mga top lots din ng ibang bansa. Kasi exciting yun. Imagine kung sobrang maging intense na ng flavors ng mga local coffees, di ba?
So, Aaron,
ayun. Factor din kasi siguro yung
Go ahead.
Ayun. So factor din kasi na kung anong varieties yung meron tayo dito sa coffee. So kung dito sa Philippines, karamihan ng mga varieties na nandito is mga Bourbons, mga Typica, Catimor. Kung makikita natin outside of the country kasi, may mga Pacamara na, mga Margolipe, mga Gesha, and ngayon yung upcoming na Yemenia. So kailangan din natin mag-step up in terms of farming din ng varieties and also processing.
So Aaron, you touched up.
So you think,
go Brian.
Ayun, go Marts.
Go, ikaw. Kakahiyaan pa tayo, mauna ka na.
So you think na kaya naman ng agri natin dito na we can farm yung mga Pacamara, ganun, or of course, mag-iiba pa rin yung byproduct niya kasi iba yung soil natin and everything. Pero sa tingin mo ba mabubuhay dito yung mga native heirlooms ng Ethiopia, ganyan? Or may chance ba silang mag-grow? Like,
kaya naman. Kailangan lang talaga ng intensive research and also funding, kailangan din yun. So, yung mga academic sector natin talaga yung kailangan ang tutulong sa atin din.
So, shout out to the academic sector.
Shout out to school.
Shout out to Doc Melde.
Shout out to Doc Mel. if you're listening, thank you. Oh, Martin, ano
Ayun.
ulit yung tanong mo?
Yan, okay. So, you were touching up on being able to educate our local farmers on ways to increase the quality of their raw products. And I think you mentioned sa simula when you were talking about why you started Trails and Traces, one of your objectives was to be able to be hands-on with the farmers in order to teach them how to create a better product, diba? So, given that with Trails and Traces, where and the Philippine context in mind, where do you hope or where do you see your business and the Philippine coffee industry going in the next few years? Hello.
I see Trails and Traces as a showcase of great tasting Philippine coffee talaga. So also we want it na give and take din siya sa farmers. So not enough na we buy the coffee from them on a fair trade price or old na ito yung status ng coffee mo ngayon and how to upgrade yung profile and how to update their processing techniques kasi may times na encounter kami na yes, bibili kami ng coffee. By that pa lang, nalalaman ko na kung saan yung mali. Paano na nasusolusyonan nila mismo doon sa farm. And also, kung open si farmer na mag-explore ng other processes, yun, tinuturo din namin sa kanila. Para yun, i-showcase din namin siya sa Trails and Traces and for everybody to enjoy.
Oh, I like that. That sounds
Like,
really... Ang ganda nun, ang ganda nun.
Ano siguro yung masarap ngayon?
So ano lang din, doon siguro sa list ng Trails and Traces, actually ano siya, blessing in disguise siya nung pandemic, which is nakilala namin si Marites Sevilla Arellano. Kung saan so far lahat ng produce niya pero turuan namin siya mag anaerobic naturals, which is parang nag semi-launch kami nung International Coffee Day na coffee niya from honey, florals and cacao nibs, naging tropical fruits yung flavor and very white wine yung profile. So handful of people lang actually naka-order nun. So hopefully makadami pa kami ng mapaprocess galing sa farm. So yun so far yung mga nasa list namin na naka-hands-on kami ng processing. And also yung mga Cordillera namin, shout out to Kapitako na binibigyan nila kami ng access.
And ako, siguro second to the last question ko would be, what's your approach when you have a new coffee to introduce? Like you're working on something new and you've never tried handling that coffee before. What's your approach to processing that kind of coffee?
First of all, I need to know how they do it without me interfering. So, kung ano yung mismong process nila, I'll oversee it muna. Tatanungin ko sila. Then, titikman ko yung coffee nila, kahit roast nila or roast namin. Titikman namin, ika-cup namin, hingi kami ng mga opinions from other people. Then, papag-usapan namin ulit ng farmer kung how to adjust yung profile, kung ano yung mali, or kung paano may improve. Then, pinaka-question talaga na kailangan namin masagot is if they really want it. Kasi yun yung pinaka-important sa farmers. Eh. Like, if we introduce new processing techniques, pero at their mind, gusto lang nila is mapakain yung families nila, ay hindi na namin pipilitin. Kasi gusto lang nila magkaroon ng livelihood talaga. Kasi kung magkakaroon, coffee is very extended gawin. So, isipin mo from harvest on the side of the mountains hanggang magpapatuyo ka sa araw, then ang makuha mo lang is green beans that you will sell for around 400, 300 pesos. Then, very extensive talaga siya. So, kailangan namin ng commitment sa farmer. Not just because may pera or what, pero gusto niya talaga.
So, do you have a farmer you're currently working with right now? na parang
Yes, actually.
secret weapon mo ngayon yan, parang gano'n? Or you're very excited about?
Ayun, siguro pinaka yung farmer talaga ngayon na hands-on kami si Marites Sevilla Arellano. So hopefully after this pandemic mapuntahan namin siya. Pero all our teachings talaga is through online lang talaga. So far nag-deliver naman siya. Nagugulat kami na nagagawa niya yung mga tinuturo namin sa kanya. Ayun. Hopefully more pa in the future.
Sana mas umokay pa yung relationship nyo with si Marites Sevilla Arellano nga. And hopefully yung mga ibang farmers din makita nila yung or they get to switch na more of sa may passion. Kasi yun nga, yung sabi mo nga na may mga iba lang, gusto lang nila ng makalatag ng pagkain sa table, not necessarily aiming for quality. So hopefully marami pang passionate farmers na I think marami na rin ngayong pandemic na, 'di ba? Like sila Sergio Loon, 'di ba? May sarili na siyang ngayon ng farm.
Sila Ate Marivic.
Sila Ate Marivic. Shout out nga pala na very focused on quality na rin. And I think that's something great that's happened for the past few months. And hopefully talaga umangat na yung Philippine coffee.
Brian, do you have any more questions for Mr. Laker fan Aaron?
Tingin mo ba abot ng Game 7? Or
wag naman sana, wag na. Tapusin na natin agad. Tapusin na natin agad to, Diyos ko po.
Sige, ganito na lang para medyo exciting for those who are still listening now. Kapag umabot ng Game 7, ano ang bibigay ni Aaron? Pero, yun. I think that's pretty much it.
Ayun, last ako, before we end na lang. Because both of you come from, you're basically coffee startups right now. And I'd like to ask both of you, what's your advice to people who are slowly getting into coffee and are very interested into starting a business? So what piece of advice would you give people who were once in both of your shoes before? So let's start with Aaron.
Basically, know what you want. Yun na siguro. Na you're not doing it for the money, you're not doing it for, I don't know. Pero dapat you know it on yourself na coffee ang gusto kong gawin. Period. Yun na yun. And everything will follow you.
Oh, thank you for that, sir. Ikaw naman, Mr. Brian.
Ako naman, and this goes to the root of the question. When some people ask me why haven't you started roasting coffee, ganyan, ba, it makes sense. And yung answer ko parati sa kanila is I respect a lot the value chain, the supply chain of coffee. Na hindi lang akong pwedeng pumasok doon without knowledge. Yeah, I have some knowledge on roasting, on ganyan, pero I respect the people who roast well. Gusto ko rin mapahiya yung customers ko if I serve. Like, paano kung pangit yung roast ko, di ba? Like, because baka minadali ko yung learning. So, and I think on the other side of the coffee world, like a lot are selling commodity coffee din na ginagawa lang nila basically kung yun nga sabi nga ni Iro na kailangan you need to wake up knowing that you love what you're doing and coffee kasi like personally may mga ibang days na mahirap running the job, like from running connector ganyan, what's next, you don't know what's gonna happen, and it's so hard kasi hindi parang alak yung coffee na store mo ng 2 years, ayos lang yan, wala silang pake doon sa manufacturer. And you will even have customers who will be asking for the, let's say, ni-roast niya on October 10. Gusto nila yung October 9 sa kanila yung batch na yun without even knowing na hindi, mas okay yung October 1 or yung September 27 batch, ganyan. Kasi yun yung ready to drink. So, ang daming factors and just rethink it first. If you're doing it purely for money, siguro weigh out the pros and cons first kasi hindi siya madali. If you're doing it for the passion, nandun ka na. Marami naman startups ngayon na willing din tumulong. Like kami ni Aaron, like nagtutulungan naman kami in Trails and Connector and everything. So, you just have to find the right people to work with. Because at the end of the day, kayo lang din magtutulungan. It's such a small world, coffee.
Thanks for that,
also,
guys.
to touch up din, need mo din na i-educate yung sarili. So, kung papasok ka sa industry, any industry naman, you need to know the ins and outs of the industry.
So, ayun, marami nang nauna before us eh. Marami nang, like, ang dami nang been there, done that. So, you can't just go in na parang kung straight line yan, you can't just go in na nasa top ka na agad.
Okay.
Yun. Talagang work your way up. Ganun.
Thank you, guys. Medyo na-inspire ako magsimula. So baka next year, abangan nyo na yung akin. May pakulo tayo next year. Secret na yan. Pero,
alam ko na yung pangalan ng coffee mo.
Alam
ko na yung pangalan.
Ano pangalan?
Calbrew.
Ano?
Calbrew daw. Calbrew. Actually, witty yan. Baka pwede. So, Aaron, before we end, we'd like to give you this chance just to promote Trails and Traces. So, I'll give you the floor. If there's anything up and coming or you want people to be para ma-hype up yung whatever you have in store.
So yeah, what's coming for Trails and Traces? Madami kaming coffees to launch soon, both local and international. And also we're coming up on our first anniversary. So
Woo!
Maglalabas kami ng merch.
Yun.
So, yeah. Thank God na nag-survive kami for 1 year. 1 year. Then this coming November and onwards na kasi start na ng harvest ng coffee. So a lot of new and fresh coffees to come. So stay tuned lang sa Trails and Traces. Papalo na rin sa Instagram and Facebook.
I'm looking forward to the merch. Honestly. Na-excite ako. So kapag meron yan, sure mag-order na ako.
Yeah.
So,
Oo nga.
matik yan. Kahit hindi mag-champion Lakers, kakuha pa rin ang merch mo. So,
nasa lahat.
yeah, okay. So, yun. So, with that, thank you again, Mr. Aaron Llavore of Trails and Traces. We really enjoyed having you here on the show. And hopefully we'll have you back here on your 10th anniversary of Trails and Traces.
Wow.
By then, baka then may nasa TV na tayo. Ako na yung Boy Abunda 2.0.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay, so okay, so thank you again, Aaron, and thank you, Brian.
Thank you din, guys, for the invitation.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day and goodbye. Bye. Oh.